Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the leading employee benefits and engagement platform.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Vantage HR Influencers Podcast, and today I'm thrilled to have Tracie Sponenberg, who's an executive leader with experience across a wide range of industries. She specializes in strategic HR management at privately held and family-owned businesses experiencing growth. Tracie has expertise in HR technology, selection and deployment, culture building and turnaround, organizational development, among other things. She is also a SHRM special expertise panel member, and she's the founder of DisruptHR and HR Rebooted company, and she's a speaker on technology, leadership, branding, and all things HR. She's currently the Chief People Officer at Granite Group. Welcome to the show, Tracie.
Thanks, Rohit. I appreciate being here.
Awesome. So, how did you get into HR and what got you excited to be in this field of human resources?
So I am fairly unusual, I think, in that back in high school, so back probably when I was 16 or 17, I knew that this was something I wanted to do. I had an aunt who worked in human resources or personnel. It was personnel back then. And I really liked psychology. I liked business, and I like people. And I think you have to love people in order to be in human resources. So very early on, I developed an interest, which was sort of weird, but that really informed the trajectory of my career.
Very interesting. You've been a transformational executive leader, and you've been very passionate about human resources. But do you think performance reviews are important? Or are they needless in these times?
So, and that's a loaded question. I think that we could talk for hours on that probably, and my feelings on that, which are complicated and long. But if we separate that out, so if we separate out the feedback part of the performance review and how the performance review is delivered. So that feedback and knowing how someone is doing and knowing how you're performing and knowing do you have all the tools that you need to succeed, that's really critical. But the way we've been doing it traditionally, once a year where you sit down with your manager and they tell you, here's how you're doing, here's your raise, see you next year. That's completely broken. So that feedback part's really important. And as we're seeing as younger generations come into the workforce, and even people of my generation and older are demanding more and more feedback because things happen quicker. And we're seeing that has to change for everyone. And for those who haven't changed, I see that performance review process changing for everyone down the road. It has to be more frequent. They have to be check-ins. They have to be less formal. That once a year written review is really dead. And I remember several years ago going to the HR Tech Expo out in Las Vegas, and I was looking for some vendors, and I was looking at vendors for exactly that, for performance reviews. And I knew that was changing. And this is probably 3 years ago. And I believe there was not one single vendor who was focused on once a year annual reviews. And there are still plenty of vendors that do them, but it's changed pretty quickly. All of a sudden, some people started creeping into the space, and then more people and more people and more people, because that's really what people are demanding, and it's really the right way to go. And we're going through that journey in our company now of looking at that and how exactly do we transition. And we already separated out the compensation and do that annually. And so it's a process, but it's a really important process, because feedback shouldn't be just once a year. It should be all the time. And it should be both ways. It should be with your manager, giving feedback to your manager, taking feedback from them, positive, negative, all kinds. And it should be a development conversation.
And before the call, we talked about, how technology has really helped HR in the last couple of years. But how has technology actually helped HR in making people more, in HR being more people focused rather than just being compliance based?
So I started my career as very much a compliance-focused, paper-pushing HR professional, and I really, it took me a long time, and I've been in HR a long time. It took me a long time to really embrace that people side, because that's what I grew up thinking that HR was, that sign this form, you must have a policy for this, you have to have a policy for that, you have to create a piece of paper for that. And that really wasn't serving people. And really the way we have to be in human resources, or the people function to serve people. It's not to serve paper. And so over the years, I embraced that, and I changed myself, and I've kind of made it a personal mission to help change others who were where I was. And, one of the best ways to do that is to embrace technology and to take a look at absolutely everything you do in the human resources department. And first of all, do you need to do that? And second of all, do you need to do that in that way? And does it work for your people? So every process, every policy, every piece of paper. And so what we did when I got to the Granite Group is I was handed a 51-page packet of new hire paper. And I was filling in, it was like this. I was filling in my name 16 different places and the address, and it was just the same thing over and over. And I came into a small team that didn't have a background in HR, and they didn't know that there was a different way. And the person who had left did, but she, at the time, there wasn't the budget to make the changes, and they didn't know. So we were able to come in and make those changes. And what we did was really take that paperwork away and make those processes easier, seamless, because we have 45 locations, right? So our managers and our people can do that quickly and easily. And then they can get back to doing the things that are important. In HR, we can serve our people. We can work on strategy to make their lives better. Their managers can spend time with them, helping train them instead of sitting with them for 3 or 4 hours to fill out benefits forms. So there's many, many ways, but the biggest thing is that you can take those kind of time-consuming tactical tasks away to focus on the things that really matter.
Got it. And what we have seen in the last couple of years is that HR managers also need to analyze data. So how does an HR manager who analyzes how can they analyze data so that leaders can know how to process data and how the employee engagement and other HR related things are happening.
So again, like I was slow to embrace technology, I was slow to embrace analytics, but it's something that I've grown to love deeply now. And I believe that data tells a story. So if you have any kind of payroll system, you have any kind of HRIS system, you have data in there, and you have data points for everything from potentially engagement points to termination to, if you have an applicant tracking system, you can tell who's applying. So those are all different data points, and you need that right system to sit on top of that, or you can pull it out manually, but it's really hard. But if you have a system that will work with you and work with that, it can pull out data so that you can bring it to your C-suite or bring it to your boss and say, and we can do this now, these are the 10 people at this particular location of this company that are most likely to leave based on these factors, including things like, commute time and tenure and, past job history maybe. And so these are things that we can do now that we couldn't do even 3, 4, 5 years ago, certainly not longer than that. All HR professionals will talk about turnover, which is kind of like the old metric, that the only one that a lot of us knew for a long time. But we can measure anything. We can measure any data. And that gives us not only the power to tell a story, the power to help our people, the power to influence a company. I don't mean to say power, but it is so critical. At my company, we put in an analytics platform about 1.5 years ago. And, I said to my boss, I work for the CEO. I said, I want our department to be as analytical as our pricing department. And our pricing department is super analytical. So I want to be able to measure everything, report on that, and know where we're headed in the future. No one can really predict the future, but we can, get pretty close with a lot of things with data and analytics.
And when you talk about analytics, platforms, any sort of products and software which you would recommend, HR leaders to take up, or you've used previously, which you would suggest to the listeners?
So there's a lot. I know that Microsoft has some good products. There are a lot out there. I can tell you, my deepest experience is what we use, and we use ADP and we use their data cloud platform. It's their best product, I think. So everyone across the world, I think, has at least heard of ADP. They pay a good chunk of the world, so a lot of people are familiar with it. And good, bad, or indifferent, certainly every solution has its challenges and every solution has its positives, but their data cloud is excellent. It's by far their best product. So what it allows to do, and I think there are a lot of other products like this, it allows it to sit into the system and pull all the data from the system. So I can look at, I can press a button and know my head count by generation. I can know my head count by location. I can benchmark. I can see where I have gaps in pay gaps in gender, if there's any gender disparity. I can look at, I can benchmark every single job and look at that against people in our industry, how people are being paid in our industry, how people are being paid in geography. So it's really, really, really robust. And it's my favorite piece of technology that we have right now.
Got it. And what, especially in the remote setup, what we've figured out is a lot of people have there are a lot of employees who range from millennials to Gen Zs to other life stages. So how can a HR person understand employees' life stage so that they can deliver better productivity and give better performance for the companies?
I think it depends on the size of your company. I think for larger companies, surveys are really helpful. Even just pulse surveys, quick survey, asking people. For us, we actually physically ask people. So we get out there and talk to people and see what they need. And for our company, we're close enough. We've got a lot of locations and we're all over the Northeast, but we're close enough to be able to go out and see, hey, what do you want? That's one of the first things I did when I started almost 5 years ago. Was I traveled around and said, what do you like about what we're doing in HR? What do you not like? And that's how we ended up changing some of our technology and embracing some new technology. We went right to the folks that are using it. And I think you have to. And now we talk a lot about generations, and I think there are more similarities than differences. And everybody wants the same thing. Everyone wants a good place to work. Everyone wants to know that their contributions are valued. Everyone wants to work for a company that they're proud of. So if we look at those things, we design for that, and then we go out and talk to people in different generations and different genders and in different races, and we make sure that we're creating a culture that embraces technology, but that's also diverse and inclusive and where everybody belongs. I think that's really the path forward.
Got it. And I wanted to understand, are there any metrics which leaders can use to measure employee engagement, especially in a remote setup where across the world, companies were forced to be in a remote environment. So are there any metrics which can be used to measure employee engagement? And do you think employee engagement has gone up during these times?
Oh, that's really interesting. So there are certainly a ton of tools, and we don't use it yet, but the ENPS, I think, is a good one, the Employee Net Promoter Score. But that, like any kind of data points, it relies on people responding and being honest. I think the best way, and again, this is we're talking about technology, and this isn't necessarily technology, but the best way is for managers to make sure that they're communicating all of the time with their people and talking with them regularly and asking them, how are they doing? What do they need, etc. So we have been, you can see this isn't my office. I wish it was, that would be awesome. This is my home office. So my team has been remote for the past few months. Our company has been working working the whole time. We provide plumbing and heating and cooling and water supply. So we've been an essential business. So our different locations are working, but a lot of our office folks are remote. And so we meet every day, face to face over Zoom or over Google Hangouts, every single day. And so I'm always asking them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And I think that's super important. But on top of that, you want to measure people who aren't doing that, and you want to get to maybe the direct reports of managers who aren't doing that. So having some type of tool that measures that engagement is helpful, and then you can do something about it. And I think it's important that you do. You can't really just measure something and then find out you have a problem and just let it sit there. So that we had a great tool that we used for a number of years, and then the company sunsetted, and we're actually actively looking for a new tool that can help supplement what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Got it. And you also talked about taking feedback and giving feedback. So, I wanted to understand, how should a leader take a feedback from their team so that they can improve themselves as a leader. And how does a leader lead in a remote environment? I know there've been a lot of webinars, a lot of discussions about it, but I just wanted to understand your thoughts and how does a leader actually lead in such an environment?
Yeah, I think taking feedback is important, but you have to ask for it. I think you have to ask, what can I do? Anything that I'm doing, let's talk about, what you need from me as your leader, and what should I do differently? Be vulnerable. So I think as a leader at any time, but especially during a remote environment, you need to be willing to be empathetic and give grace and be really patient. So people who are working through times like these aren't necessarily working through normal times. They may be dealing with caring for ill people or caring for parents or children or pets who may not, who are all sharing a home, that it may be an unusual situation. So you just have to be patient and empathetic and listen, I think, more than you talk. So it's really, really, really critical to put yourself in a vulnerable position and really maybe lead by example. So, one of the things that I talk about with my team is if I'm feeling overwhelmed or if I'm feeling, having a challenging day, I share that with them. So, this was a tough day, because if they see me saying that, it gives them permission to be, if they were feeling, most of them would be fine, but if they were feeling like, oh, maybe I don't want to talk about that, it gives them permission to be like, oh, she's doing that. Well, maybe that's okay. Or, make sure that you take time for yourself. And, I'll tell them I go on a few short walks a day just to kind of clear my head. And so I think, if you're a good leader, good leaders are going to lead well during normal times, and they're going to lead the same way during extraordinary times, but just being much more mindful of what other people are going through. So that empathy is so critical all the time, but especially now.
Right. No, absolutely. Empathy is really important during these times of crisis. And, Granite Circle is a rewards and recognition platform. And, how important do you think, rewards and recognition and giving timely rewards to employees is important? And do you think such sort of SaaS products, software products like Granite Circle would be the way forward going ahead?
Yeah, I think this is actually something also that we're looking at, and I was looking at a number of different solutions a few years ago, but I think my failing then was I didn't ask enough people what they wanted. So we ended up creating a 6-part recognition program in-house that works pretty well. And I think the key with any recognition program is knowing your people. So I'm an introvert, and most people don't realize that, but everyone loves recognition, right? But I like it privately. And, an email from my boss, which he's done, certainly just saying thank you for your hard work is, means more to me than, having to get up on stage, which I might throw up and really would be horrifying for me. So everybody's different. So I think you know your people, know what they want, and know what's meaningful, what your company can afford, and then design a program around that. And it should be multiple different points. So like I said, some people like to be recognized privately, some people like to be recognized publicly, some people like monetary recognition, some people want to get a surprise gift. And so something that can do a lot of different things and make a lot of different people happy is important. But we don't want to forget about the power of a simple thank you or,
Right.
Hey, great job. That is the best kind of recognition ever. Those other things are wonderful and they're super important, but just thank you and a meaningful thank you is the best thing that you can do for someone.
Correct. Absolutely makes sense. And I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
So I have right now, I'm reading, How to Be an Anti-Racist. So I think that's not necessarily, well, it is a business book now, right? So
Right.
a lot of my reading has been, I just read the memo by Minda Harts, and then there's some of the old standbys. My Iceberg is Melting, and they're Good to Great.
Right.
Some of the Quiet by Susan Cain, about is something that's meaningful to me. And I try to read, books here and there, but one of the best ways I keep up on the news is love Harvard Business Review. Keep up on business articles. I love the Harvard Business Review. So that's one of my favorite things. And then Twitter. So Twitter, because I have a tiny attention span, I can kind of scroll through and then pick out the things that I want to read, Wall Street Journal articles, etc.
Nice, correct. And do you follow any HR leader or CEO whom you respect and listeners should also follow?
Oh boy, yeah, a lot. So my friend Steve Brown is one of he's probably the most connected person in HR. He's Steve Brown with an E, at Steve Brown on Twitter. And he is just literally probably one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. And it is so positive about the field of human resources that it's everyone should know him. He wants to make a mission to meet everybody. And like I'm an introvert, he's a massive extrovert. So there are so many. William Tin Cup for technology, I really love following him. He has a really unique view in the world. And Lori Ruderman, who for all things HR, technology, and otherwise, she's really a former HR professional that has created a really, really cool career that I really admire. Tara Furiani, who has a web show called Not the HR Lady. I've never met her in person, but I feel like I've known her my whole life. She's got she's who I wish I could be in a lot of ways. She's very straightforward and really no BS approach to life. And I could go on and on and on and on, but there's a couple more. One of the coolest voices, I think, and I'm going to pronounce her last name, Osasu Agrabe, I think is how you pronounce it. She's one of the coolest young professional voices, emerging young professional voices that I just love following her and seeing what she's doing and what she's writing. And I was a blogger for SHRM last year, so I got to meet a lot of really cool people, and I've been very fortunate to do that.
Right, so we'll try to put that on the show notes. And Tracie, what is the one piece of advice would you give to young HR leaders who graduated out of college this year and they're trying to build their careers in HR? I know it's tough times for people who are graduating this year, but what one piece of advice would you give to them?
So I always give the same advice, and it's take a risk. That's something that I wasn't good at when I was younger, and I wish I had been, but take a risk. Get out of your comfort zone and apply for that job that you're not qualified for, you think you're not qualified for. Go to take that job on the other side of the country. just go for it. And I think that's really important before we all get settled into life and have mortgages, and so people have children and pets and get kind of positioned in a spot for a period of time. Now's the time really to take a risk and do something really different.
All right. And Tracie, what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about your blog and HR Rebooted company that you?
Sure. So you can find a list of the places that I'm going to be speaking and the things that I've done on traciesponenberg.com. You can find our videos and our podcasts on hrrebooted.com, and that's with my friend Michelle Strasburger. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Tracie Spon or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, I will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking out your time and speaking to us. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking.
Thanks, Rohit. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for new episodes.